It's strange how life can shatter in the most ordinary moments. For me, it happened on a Tuesday morning in April, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, scrolling mindlessly through Instagram before heading to my first job of the day. I almost missed it. A flash of familiar blue eyes and dark hair in someone else's story? I paused, scrolled back. There he was, my husband David, smiling beneath the Eiffel Tower, his arm around a woman I had never seen before. The caption read, "Paris Day 3. Can't believe we're finally here." My coffee went cold as I stared at the phone, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. David was supposed to be at a work conference in Chicago. He had left 3 days ago with his suitcase packed with dress shirts and ties. He had kissed me goodbye at the door, reminding me not to forget to water his plants. "Remember, cell reception might be spotty in the conference center," he had said. "Don't worry if I don't respond right away." I hadn't worried. After 8 years of marriage, I trusted him completely. Now, looking at the undeniable evidence on my screen, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I clicked on the profile that had posted the story. Someone named Melissa Bennett. Her account was public. There were more photos. David at a cafe raising a glass of wine. David at the Louvre. David kissing her cheek in front of Notre Dame. The posts went back months, though previous photos didn't include my husband. Just glimpses of her life, yoga poses, beach sunsets, inspirational quotes. I tapped on a photo of them together from the previous night. The caption read, "Finally taking our dream trip, worth every penny and all the waiting." The irony was soul-crushing. For the past year, I had been working myself to exhaustion trying to save money. In addition to my full-time job as a nurse, I picked up weekend shifts at a retail store. I packed lunches instead of buying them. I canceled my gym membership and started running in the neighborhood park instead. I hadn't bought new clothes in over a year. All because 6 months ago David, who managed our finances, had sat me down for a serious conversation about our budget. "We need to tighten our belts," he had said, spreadsheets open on his laptop. "My company is going through some restructuring and things are uncertain. We should build up our emergency fund." I had agreed immediately. We had always dreamed of buying a house, starting a family. Financial security mattered. When he suggested we postpone our annual vacation, I was disappointed but understood. We were a team, facing challenges together, or so I thought. Now, with shaking hands, I opened our joint bank account app. The balance was lower than it should have been. I scrolled through the recent transactions and found several large withdrawals over the past few months. Then I checked our credit card statement. There it was. Air France, hotel charges in Paris, restaurant expenses, thousands of dollars spent while I worked double shifts and felt guilty buying a $4 coffee. I called David. It went straight to voicemail. I texted, "I saw the Instagram posts. I know you're in Paris. Call me." No response. I was due at the hospital in an hour for my 12-hour shift. Patients would be depending on me. Somehow I showered and dressed, functioning on autopilot while my mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Who was she? Was our entire marriage a lie? That shift was the longest of my life. Between checking vital signs and administering medications, I found myself staring at walls, fighting back tears. My coworkers noticed, asking if I was okay. I mumbled something about not feeling well. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I felt physically ill, like I'd been punched in the stomach repeatedly. When I got home, there was still no response from David. I called his office and was told he was on personal leave this week. Not at a conference. Another lie. I spent the night scouring social media, piecing together the puzzle of my husband's secret life. Melissa's Instagram had tagged other people in some photos, mutual friends I had never heard of. Through their accounts, I found older pictures. David and Melissa at a Christmas party last December. David and Melissa hiking in September. While I was working my second job, my husband was building another life. The next morning, my phone finally rang. David's name flashed on the screen. "Emma, I can explain," he said immediately. His voice sounded different, higher-pitched with panic. "You're in Paris," I said flatly, "with another woman, while I've been working 2 jobs because you said we couldn't afford a vacation." "It's complicated," he replied. "Melissa is—" "I didn't mean for this to happen." "How long?" I asked. The pause was damning. "A year and a half," he finally admitted. "A year and a half, before the financial discussions, before the second job. I had been making sacrifices to build our future while he was spending our money on another woman." "The money?" I managed to ask. "Our savings?" Another pause. "I've been keeping separate accounts." The betrayal was layered, each revelation worse than the last. Not only had he cheated, but he had systematically lied about our finances, manipulated me into making sacrifices, and stolen the money I earned. "I want you out of the house," I said with surprising steadiness. "When you get back from your romantic Paris vacation that we couldn't afford, I want you gone. Emma, please, we can work through this." I hung up. Then I called a locksmith and had the locks changed. Next, I contacted a lawyer. By the time David returned from Paris 4 days later, I had removed his access to our joint accounts, documented the financial discrepancies, and filed for divorce. He showed up at the door, suitcase in hand, looking tanned and well-rested from his vacation, the vacation I helped pay for but wasn't invited on. I watched through the window as he tried his key, then knocked with increasing urgency. I didn't answer. He called, texted, emailed. I sent a single response: communication through my lawyer only. The weeks that followed were a special kind of hell. David launched a campaign to explain and win me back. He sent flowers to my workplace. He had his mother call me. He emailed long apologies, claiming he had made a terrible mistake, that he had been confused, that he really loved me. Not once did he address the financial deception. Friends and family were shocked. To the outside world, we had been the perfect couple. David was charming, attentive at social gatherings, always the first to show my accomplishments on social media. Couples goals, people had commented on our photos. How hollow that seemed now. Some mutual friends tried to encourage reconciliation. "Everyone makes mistakes," they said. "Marriage is about forgiveness." But this wasn't just about the affair. This was about the systematic way David had exploited my trust, manipulated me into making sacrifices while he spent frivolously, and stolen not just money but years of my life. I had postponed my own dreams, worked to the point of exhaustion, all for a future that he had no intention of sharing with me. Through the divorce process, I discovered even more. David had been siphoning money from our accounts for years. There were unexplained cash withdrawals dating back almost to the beginning of our marriage. The financial advisor I consulted estimated that he had taken over $50,000 from our joint accounts, money I had helped earn. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I got the small apartment we rented, my car, and a settlement for half of what David had spent on his double life. It wasn't really about the money, though. No amount could compensate for the betrayal. After the divorce, I found myself at a strange crossroads. I was 32, starting over completely. The future I had planned and worked for had evaporated. The second job I no longer needed. The savings that were meant for our family were gone. I felt adrift, unsure how to rebuild. It started with small steps. I quit the retail job I had taken to save for our non-existent future. I used some of the settlement money to take a solo trip, not to Paris but to a quiet beach town where I could think. I spent long days walking along the shore, processing the anger, the hurt, the humiliation. I also started therapy, trying to understand how I had missed the signs. Had I been too trusting? Too willing to sacrifice? Why hadn't I questioned the financial arrangements more closely? The therapist helped me see that my willingness to work hard and make sacrifices wasn't a weakness, it was a strength that had been exploited. The problem wasn't me trusting, it was him being untrustworthy. Slowly, I began to reclaim my life. I redecorated the apartment, erasing traces of David. I reconnected with friends I had been too busy working to see. I took a cooking class I had always been interested in but had put off because of our budget constraints. I opened my own bank account and started saving again, this time for my dreams alone. 6 months after the divorce, Melissa sent me a message. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won out. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "He told me you two were separated, that you had agreed to divorce but were living together until it was finalized for financial reasons. I only found out the truth when he came back from Paris and everything fell apart. I know this doesn't excuse anything, but I thought you should know you weren't the only one he lied to." I didn't respond. Whether she had known or not didn't change what had happened. But there was some small vindication in knowing that the relationship built on lies had collapsed under their weight. According to mutual friends, David had moved to another state for a new job, alone. A year after discovering that Instagram story, I took myself to Paris. It was a symbolic choice, reclaiming the city that had been the setting for my husband's betrayal. I stayed in a charming hotel, visited the landmarks at my own pace, sat in cafes with books, and took long walks along the Seine. On my last evening, I found myself at a small restaurant near the Eiffel Tower. As I sipped a glass of wine and watched the tower's lights begin to sparkle in the dusk, I realized something profound. The past 2 years had been painful beyond measure, but they had also given me clarity. I knew now what I deserved, what I would accept, and what I would never tolerate again. My phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced down to see a work email, something about a possible promotion. I smiled and put the phone away. It could wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for me. I raised my glass in a silent toast to Paris, to painful endings, and to new beginnings that belong entirely to me. The waiter, noticing my solitary celebration, smiled. "To what are we drinking, madame?" "To dreams deferred," I replied, "and dreams rediscovered." He nodded as if he understood completely and left me to my thoughts. I took another sip of wine and watched as the last light faded from the sky, leaving only the glittering city before me. The Instagram story that had shattered my world had also, in some strange way, set me free. I had lost a husband but found myself. And sitting alone in Paris, I realized that was more than a fair trade.